Welcome back to Exploring Ways to Wellness. I'm Sarah Gorev, and today I'm delighted to welcome back Kaz, who you might remember from a previous episode. Today she's going to be talking to us about family constellations, a practice that looks at the patterns and the burdens we can unconsciously carry from our wider family system, not just in our own lifetime. A quick note before we start: to explain the concept, Kaz will be using a hypothetical example that involves the accidental death of a child, and later she does touch on miscarriage and stillbirth. Both are handled with real care, but if it's not for you today, no worries at all. We'll see you in the next episode or when you're ready. You'll also hear a couple of brief dips in audio quality. A few gremlins on the call, I'm afraid, but the conversation itself was so rich, I really didn't want to lose any of it. So, with that, let's dive in. Welcome back to Exploring Ways to Wellness. I'm thrilled to have a returning guest with me today. So Karen Conville, you may remember from an episode we did on Ayurveda back last summer, I think it was. And I've invited her back because she also uses another practice that I'm really fascinated by, which is family constellations. Thank you for joining us, Kaz, to talk about that, and welcome today.
Thank you for having me.
I have been really looking forward to this conversation because following meeting Kaz for the last podcast that we did together, I have been on one of her retreats, and family constellations were part of that. I sort of got an inkling for what they're all about. But I guess the first thing it would be good to sort of delve into is we're talking family constellations. Who is considered family for this? So obviously we have these sort of blended versions of families these days, and then you've got your sort of chosen family with friends as well. So what would be included?
Yeah, so it's family constellations, but there's also kind of like systemic constellations. So it's based on your family being a system, but you can also use this kind of work with any kind of system. So if we're talking about your traditional family and the whole beauty of working with the energy of a system or the dynamics within a system, and we think about the things that we are maybe acting out unconsciously that have been inherited through our familial line, then it would be kind of like our parents, their parents, all of the ancestors going back.
Right.
But because families are not very straightforward, usually, there's usually a lot of stuff and stories going on. There are, in terms of this work, other people from outside of the traditional bloodline, I would say, that come into the system. So, for example, say somebody way past had come out one day on his way to work and accidentally hit a neighbour's child and killed them in his car.
Right.
Then you've taken a life, not on purpose, not consciously, but you've taken a life, and that guy becomes part of their system, and that child becomes part of this system because there's some sort of entanglement there. There's something that's happened with a life.
Okay. Yeah. So there's some sort of incident that has meant that almost their stories are crossed in a way.
Yeah. So we've got the traditional family members and the stories connected to them. But what actually matters in the system is all of the events and the people that are brought in, which is how they're all interconnected.
You don't necessarily have to be related to the person in order for them to be part of a past story within your family.
That's it. So there's something happening in my life, and I can't seem to get to the bottom of it. Maybe it didn't start with me. Maybe it's from way back. So all of the dynamics and the experiences that people in our family have had live on in the system. And if there's been any kind of distress without any resolution or resolve, then we can unconsciously take that on further down the line. So in the case of the example I've just given of this guy, he's taken the life of a child, not consciously, not on purpose, but that's what's happened. Now, it may be that his family are really understanding of that. There's been no exclusion from the family, that he's absolutely filled with remorse. And he tries to carry on with his life regardless, but he lives his life feeling really conscious and guilty for taking that life. It might show up in that he believes that he isn't worthy of having any children because he's taken the life of another or whatever it is. But he might not actually speak these out because maybe he's from a time when men don't talk about these kinds of things.
Yeah.
But then maybe he's already got a child, and then further down the line, 2 generations down, you've got someone who could either not want to have children, but it's a personal choice anyway, but there might just be this thing of like, I can't, because the belief underneath it is, I can't keep them safe. I'll harm them in some way without meaning to.
So various experiences happen to us, or various things impact our personalities, the way we feel about ourselves. And as you said, often these aren't talked about, but they could be things that unconsciously you pass down, whether it's through your actions or through the way that you react to other people and your relatives going forward. I guess in your genetics, maybe you can carry these sort of markers of things that have happened to you.
Yeah, so epigenetically, it can filter down. And obviously we're not born consciously choosing that we're gonna do this. It's all happening at the very, very deepest level in the blood, all of the messages and the information that's encoded in there. And there's some sort of, so it might be that that's the way that situation manifests, or it could be in a belief of, actually, in order to atone for taking the life of another, if you're identified or entangled with this family member, you're going to spend your life really trying to save children, but you might not know why in this lifetime this particular thing really matters to you.
Yeah,
But you're trying to atone for something that happened quite generations ago, and sometimes we don't even know what these stories are.
Yeah, so that's really fascinating that actually it could come out in something that is of benefit to society or your own feeling of self-worth. You're attracted to certain things as opposed to it being, I know I've got a problem, I can't work out what it is. Let's have a look at what possibly happened in previous generations.
Yeah. And let's say it might be that this guy never talked about it. So that kind of stayed within that family, or whatever happened. Maybe he moved away. We don't know. I don't know where this hypothetical stories come from, to be honest.
It's working for the purpose of example. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know where it came from. It's clearly somewhere in this collective system. So yeah, imagine they've moved away. Nobody really talked about this. It wasn't really known. So therefore, the people who are experiencing these kinds of things might not know about it. But where it might become a problem is if someone then became so entrenched in this thing of trying to atone for something, always feeling like they've done something wrong, because that would filter into other aspects of your life, wouldn't it?
Right.
If you always have this underlying core belief that you've done something wrong, or you're going to harm somebody without intending to, that might be shown up in your life in more ways than you doing that work of trying to atone for someone else. Or it can be that it's so deep that it stops you from enjoying and living your life.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to get close to someone in case you hurt them.
So is that what tends to happen? People come to you after they've tried other things and they want to see if there's something in past generations that's now impacting them? Or are they very aware something's happened in previous generations and they're concerned it's impacting them now?
The people that I work with tend to be people who are very aware, they take responsibility for their own lives, and maybe they have noticed a pattern that's repeating. going down the line, and they're like, actually, this has to stop with me. Maybe they know about intergenerational trauma and all of that stuff, and they want to explore it further. And sometimes, I mean, how I came across it was, so for a long time I was working with subconscious programming and the patterns and the beliefs that we have, but it was very much trying to link everything to what was happening in this lifetime.
Yeah.
And so for a lot of it, it's like I can't possibly know what's happened before then. If you think of as a collective, all of the things that will be shaping and informing how, as a collective, we're experiencing today. So thinking about Holocaust or famines or anything like that, how that lives on in the body, epigenetically getting to where we are now. So I knew that, and I was just working at this level of, but this is all I can work with because this is what I know.
Yeah.
So when I personally found family constellations, to me, it was that missing piece of this is something that's happening in the system. And whatever the story is, I might never have known that, say, that was the story. But actually, what's happening in my life is I'm not getting close to people because on some level, I feel like I'm doing something wrong or I'm going to harm them and I won't know why.
Yeah.
I won't
Interesting.
know what that is.
Yeah.
So when you expand on this issue, so it's not that someone comes, well, sometimes people do come and they say, I've noticed we've got this ancestral pattern, I'd like to work with that. More often than not, though, people come and they're just like, this is the issue I'm experiencing in my life.
Yeah.
Whether it's to do around food or relationships or the career or finances, whatever it is, any issue, they'll come and they're like, there's clearly something happened because I'm doing the work, but there's something deeper here, which has stopped me making any progress. It's stopped me moving forward. So a lot of the times it's expanding the issue and the relationship between the person who's coming and that issue.
Yes. Yeah.
So you can
So
do
you
it.
don't even need to know that there was an issue in the family before, and it doesn't
No.
need to be something necessarily that you recognize, I guess, in the sort of first generation back, because that's something I noticed sort of observing a family constellation is it can bring in members that you didn't even, consciously know were even in your family.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have this, the idea is you've got this personal conscience. We know right from wrong usually. And we can just, if you think about on an immediate family level, so just like you, your parents and their parents, up to like grandparents level. If you think back when you were a child and your mother would say, shh, don't do that, the neighbours will hear, or whatever it is, it all stems from that need of belonging and safety and survival. So we have this kind of nonsense, which is what I was saying before. I'm doing the work where it's kind of like, well, maybe you can't remember things from your own childhood. So how are you supposed to remember things going all
Of
the way
course.
back?
Yeah.
So then we have the collective conscience. And that is basically one of the things that we might never know about, but they're still affecting us somehow. It's the same thing underneath it. It all comes back, like love is underneath it all. The need for love and belonging and acceptance and acknowledgement is underneath all of it.
Yeah.
But sometimes we know what the issue is. More often than not, we don't know where the issue is.
Yeah.
And those kinds of things, because we're all interconnected, can be felt throughout all of our systems. So we all tend to know what it feels like to have been betrayed or to be excluded from something. Or we also know the opposite of that. We know what belonging feels like. Typically, we feel like maybe not belonging, but connection. When you feel like connected to something, or you feel drawn without any reason why to certain countries or certain types of people. We naturally have this gravitation to what feels like it's more. We're all part of nature, and it's always looking for balance.
Yeah. Which I guess links back again to the episode that we did on Ayurveda. And
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
can see how you would be drawn between one and another. Definitely.
That's it. So if we do link this to Ayurveda and we think about all of the elements and how they all have a place and they all have a purpose. So that ecosystem, everything has equal value. It has a place. And that is the essence of the constellation system as well. So when we talk about constellations, people think it's to do with astrology and stuff like that. It's basically to do with the dynamics of how energies are in relation to another. So probably like astrology, when the planets are in certain areas, the energy changes. There's different archetypes are lived through, different stories are lived out. We experience collectively these types of things. So when you have all of these different things in relation to each other, but they all have a place and they all have a purpose and they all belong, and there's no judgment on that. It is. There's the give and the take. There's the cycles, the seasons, the balance that's naturally being sought.
Yeah. But I guess that's a view you can sort of see from above. When you're in a family, it can feel, I mean, judgment, for example, is one word you just said that I think, well, there is a lot of judgment in families and there's a lot of energies that can feel like they butt up against each other as well as, but I guess within the grand scheme of things, you can see this sort of ebb and flow.
And whichever way you choose to think of it, whether you're stepping out or you're stepping up, this is the beauty of the constellation work, is that very often the person who is having an issue looked at is expanding something out. So whether you look at it as you're kind of like, it's all down and you're mapping it all out and you're above it and you're looking down from a different perspective, like you've just said, the person kind of comes with an issue and will say, this is what I'm experiencing. The facilitator will have we don't need to know absolutely everything. It's just what you feel might be important to know. Because what we're looking for is like where there might be a pattern where you're repeating from somewhere else, or where there might be somebody or something that's been excluded.
Yeah.
So all of these things, all of these judgments, all of this victim perpetrator dynamic are useful to know. But actually, when you expand and you open out the constellation, what you're doing is you're just looking at it from a different perspective. And you're trusting whatever comes at that point is what wants to be looked at, what wants to be acknowledged, what needs to be witnessed.
Yeah. And it might not be what the person is expecting, I guess.
Exactly.
Because I guess you mentioned there about victim perpetrator, and it just made me think that actually, do you find sometimes people are coming looking for someone to blame or shame or absolve themselves of responsibility of something?
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is that we all are victims and we are perpetrators on some level.
Yeah.
And when people come, quite often they can be, well, there's something that's happened. I mean, I have people come in family constellations just with a curiosity and an open heart of kind of like,
I guess that's the key, isn't it? Be curious about what's happened and how that may be manifesting itself.
Yeah. And the interesting thing, and I'm sure you'll be able to attest to this, is that we could sit on here and talk all day about family constellations, but until you actually witness or take part in one, it's very difficult to get across what you actually mean by a lot of this. Because I can talk about there being a system, and if we think of that as a family system and going all the way back in the ancestors, ideally there'd be mother and father and the love would flow to a child. That child would get married to somebody else, or they'd carry on, the next generation would come and the love would flow one way in that direction. And everyone would just be like, this is where my attention and my love is going, and the flow of life would filter down.
So like those beautiful family trees you see drawn out in sort of all ornate and okay. Yeah.
So, but then the reality of it doesn't look like that perfect tree. You know, if you were to look at it, there's branches that are snapped off, there's things that are looking a different way, there's a lot of chaos within that. And each energy is basically just trying to do the best they can and managing with that. When we think of the victim perpetrator dynamic, there might be some people, if we're going into judgment, so the example of the guy who accidentally knocked over his neighbour's child could be called murderer. There could be a lot of blame put upon that. And of course, there's consequences and responsibilities that come with that. But if you think of the implications on two family systems, then, so obviously there's a trauma on this system, which has got the child, which is the devastation of losing a child, of losing it as someone so young, and everything that comes with that. This system as well have also got a devastation and a guilt that they might feel for that, and everything that comes with that. Both are suffering.
Yeah.
There's different aspects and perspectives, but both are suffering. So where the healing comes is where we acknowledge and witness that suffering, and we bring them into union. It's not, when people come into this work, there's something around kind of like they're a perpetrator and they deserve to be excluded or punished or whatever for what it is that they've done. But actually it happened and it has a place.
Yeah.
Where the healing comes within that is, I see that you're in pain. I can see that you can acknowledge that this is something I'm in pain too. And there's some sort of movement where if you think of a victim and a perpetrator, one feels small and one feels big. Actually, everybody equally has a place and equally has the sense of belonging in the system.
Yes.
And whatever happened, and it's brought us to where we are at this point in time whenever we're looking at it.
Yeah. And I guess all emotions are relevant and all can be acknowledged.
Yeah. Yeah. So when we do this work, if this conversation happens and one feels really small and one feels really big in terms of victim or perpetrator, then what you have is the sense of power being taken from someone else.
Right.
And you're not fully living your life in the way that you would ideally be able to, and live in your own destiny, because there's this perpetrator that has done something to you.
Yeah.
So if we give everyone a place and we acknowledge what is and acknowledge what happens, sometimes there's just, that is enough for a shift to take place.
Yeah.
Sometimes it hasn't even been looked at, or there's been so much energy and anger towards something, or this side's been looking for atonement and wanting to put something right. There's a lot of energy goes to what's unseen.
Yeah.
And what's unacknowledged. And the acknowledgement is absolutely the key in uniting people in the suffering so that you can unite them in the freedom.
Yeah.
When we do this work, we're healing the energy of what happened. We're acknowledging what is. It belongs, it has a place, but we give it its order as well. So that happened before, it came before us. And with honor and dignity and grace, we kind of acknowledge this was your story, but actually can I take the wisdom and the gifts from that and live my life in my way without constantly trying to atone for something that maybe happened 100 years ago.
Yes. Yeah. So it's almost not really your wound to carry. You can leave it with that person in the past. So on an intellectual level, that all makes sense. But if we then come on to what a session looks like, I found absolutely fascinating. What did you feel when you first saw a family constellation session?
So I trained with Vida, and she's amazing. And I saw her at a festival. No, it was some sort of gathering, and I went with one of my friends who is actually quite shy and wouldn't really be the one to put a hand up or to step into a group or do anything like that. If anything would be flipped, I would be the one that'd be like, yeah, I'm going to have a go at this. I'm going to get in
I can
it.
imagine
But actually,
that.
I love all of this stuff. I love the quantum side of it. I've just got a really curious mind.
Yes.
But I'm also quite skeptical about stuff. So I go in and sit in it and I was like, hang on, but she seems to know a few people here. So maybe these all everybody that's in this circle, or the certain people in this circle, know this story. So basically, if Ida chooses someone to have an issue expanded and to explore and to have their constellation, and she puts some fabrics on the floor. So they're basically just little bits of fabric with a V cut out, and the V, if you imagine a pair of feet on a square with a V in the middle, it denotes the direction that they're facing.
Right.
And someone chooses a fabric to represent her and a fabric to represent the issue or the family member or the person that she's, a partner or whatever it was. And where they are in relation to each other is going to affect how they feel, how they express themselves. So they could be facing, they could have backs to each other, they could be closer, they could be further apart, all of this. So I'm thinking, yeah, that makes sense. But still, in the back of my mind, there's going to be people in this room that actually know her or know this situation of this person has brought this issue. So I'm tuned into the energy of the people that are just in the group, not specifically, but you kind of know. And then they stand up and they go to stand on these fabrics and they shift. They hold themselves different. Whereas the face might have been quite relaxed before, they'd be quite stern looking. There's just some sort of shift. And so as the session progresses, I'm kind of looking like, this is quite good, but also like, is this role play? Is this people kind of stepping into a different thing? And it doesn't feel like that. But now it's so intrigued. I was kind of watching what was going on with some people, and then before I knew it, the girl I was with was up and standing on a fabric. And I was just, what on earth is happening here? Because this friend she's wonderful, but there was a lot of times I would have to say, can you speak up? Because I can't quite hear what you're saying.
Right.
Yeah. Very softly spoken, very gentle. And she stood up and she was upright, her shoulders were back, and she was projecting her voice like this fierce grandmother who had stepped into this constellation. I was like, whoa, I know there's something happening here, because she wouldn't do that.
That's not natural for her. Yeah.
No,
and so what had happened here is that more pieces of fabric are put out as the investigation goes on into more elements of the family constellation, as I understand it. And you don't necessarily know who that person is going to be as part of that constellation. It's not that someone has like a list of, right now we're going to look at the grandfather, now we're going to look at the grandmother. It sort of naturally develops, and then the people who are in the audience, in the environment, are asked if they're drawn to that piece of fabric to become part of that constellation. Yeah. And then how would you describe that what happens when they stand on the fabric?
Yeah, so in essence, what's happening is exactly as you've said there. You don't have to go into this knowing what everything is. So that takes some of the thing of it being role play. Yeah. Because the person whose issue it is can choose and say at the facilitator, this represents me, this represents me issue, or this represents me, and this represents me mother and my father. So you can start with 2 or 3 fabrics on the floor. Nobody else knows what they are. It's just a coloured fabric. Yeah. So the person places them where they believe it is as a starting point, and then they sit back and they're out of it by then. It's like they're observing, they're witnessing whatever will unfold with the energies within the dynamics of this constellation. So somebody who has come to the circle to witness or to participate as a representative for one of these fabrics, and a fabric can be an energy, an event, a situation, a person, a quality. It's just some sort of frequency that is connected to something in the story. So it could be a family member, it could be infertility, it could be money, whatever. So you have these different fabrics representing something.
The facilitator won't necessarily say, who wants to come and represent money,
Exactly.
or who wants to come and
Yeah.
represent this
Yeah. And it's
person.
the strangest thing because sometimes you don't know why. And it's crazy because you're looking and going, is this, that's just a blue bit of fabric on the floor. And I don't know why, but I can't take my eyes off it. And you're really drawn to it.
So that's what happened to your friend, that she was drawn to a certain fabric, went and stood on it, and then
Yeah. So she was sitting next to me last night, and for whatever reason, this fabric's on the floor. She gets up and she's standing on it. And as soon as she connects with that energy, it's it's different from her. She's tapping into whatever is going on in the child. So if she's standing there and she's this fierce grandmother and she's really projecting a voice and she's really standing and standing up for someone or being part of this dynamic. And I don't even think at the time she knew she was this part. She just stood up and she was like, I'm really fierce and I feel like I need to be here. And something needs to be said about that. It's not that I knew at that time she was this fierce grandmother. I'm just at the time thinking, yeah,
what's going on? Yeah.
something really is happening here because I thought she wouldn't have. So I then kind of relaxed and I was like, oh my God, this is blowing my mind because all of the things that come from that, the healing sentences, the moving, and how is it feeling in relation to this one, and how is it in relation to that one, and some sort of emotion or story or something that needs to come up and out is expressed and acknowledged, and the witnessing in it is healing, not just for the people, the person whose constellation it is, but typically the people who get up and represent recognize something in that.
And that's
From
why they were
life.
drawn to that energy.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's not always at the time. Sometimes it's afterwards, and I'm like, I can't believe I never even connected this. But and it doesn't have to be in terms of like, this is also my story. Sometimes you step into a role that allows you to be in the perspective as a perpetrator of somebody in your story.
So it gives you the opportunity to understand that something that happened in your story by stepping into the perspective of somebody else.
Yeah. And these are just like positive side effects of doing this work because it can be quite heavy work.
Yes.
You know, you can go into this, we don't know what's going to come up, but whatever is right and ready to come up and to be acknowledged is where the healing is.
Yeah.
So it's basically this energy that has come from your lineage. We're carrying these burdens unconsciously, these stories, these patterns, and trying to get on with our own life and our destiny. And particularly, we will have always observed in the healing community, I think, a lot of the stuff around healing can be kind of trying to transcend the humanness of it.
Yes.
But what the constellation work is to do is to say we're all human. We have these experiences. And this story actually didn't start with us, but we can do this work if we are the ones that are courageous enough to look at this from this perspective of understanding that actually the witnessing, the acknowledgement of it, the giving everything a place. We're saying this happened and maybe it wasn't okay, but this thing happened and it has a place in this story. But actually it's time to close the chapter on that story because we're writing a new story now.
Yes. Yeah. That's the real key, isn't it? We're now looking to the future, or the present and the future, taking our own responsibility for what's going forward by then saying, thank you, but that's in the past.
Yeah. And that's the phrase. Is a thank you. That's for life because without all of this, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be me, and I wouldn't be in this position right now where I'm doing this work. And I'm willing to go into this deeper layer because actually I don't want to carry this forward.
Yes.
And what I'm really hoping and I'm seeing happening a lot, which is really encouraging for me, is that people are now recognizing that something has to change and we have to be the ones to change it.
Yeah.
So when we come together in community, and it's a great community with the family constellations, because people show up for this work as a representative or just a witness for no other reason than to bring healing to humanity.
Yeah.
You know,
And that is
people in the
beautiful.
constellation world can show up and be there just as a sense of trying to get some understanding
Yeah.
and reclaiming the humanness and the humanity of that. And what that does is it allows us to look at things with more compassion
Yeah.
and to think about where we might have given away our power and how we can reclaim that and how we can come together. So we can do the individual work, but how can we come together and acknowledge what has been and stop history from repeating itself
Mm-hmm.
to try and collectively, unconsciously resolve something that we never chose in the first place, a
Yeah.
story that didn't start with us.
Yeah.
How do we reclaim that power and then take a new leap forward? How do we start something new? Release those burdens of the past and kind of with the dignity, hand them back and say, right, thank you very much for this, but actually that story belongs with you.
Yeah. It
And
served
then,
its purpose. I'm going to write the next chapter. Thank you.
yeah, and the whole thing of like, you can't receive the gifts when your hands are full of all of the, the stuff you've been carrying. So when you give
Yeah.
that back, you're then opening space up energetically for those gifts and the wisdom to flow through and for the flow of life to become much easier, for your life force to be directed in this present moment. But what am I creating going forward?
Yeah.
So it's really empowering
Yeah.
work.
And I think that's where I find it really interesting that it's quite different to a lot of work that's done in this space about understanding yourself. But as this object on its own, without acknowledging that some of this baggage or some of these elements, this seems to beautifully acknowledge those things, but say, yes, we're experiencing the world through that lens, but some of them aren't relevant to us today to then take forward. We can leave those in the
Absolutely.
past. Yes, they're part of our story, but it's a past story and we get to choose how we go forward.
Absolutely. You're spot on with that. Where the healing is in the community. So when this was first discovered, so there's Bert Hellinger is where the family constellations comes from. And he was working with some tribes in Africa. So in these tribes, these people had stories passed on from them. They knew about their lineage. They knew, I am the son of such and such, who's the son of such and such. And they could go all the way back and had all of these stories, and they'd gather and they'd talk about if something happened, everybody knew and everybody kind of learned and understood around it. The world we're living in is based on separation, on like some sort of hierarchy, working in a place of kind of, it's all about me.
Yeah.
Added to the fact that a lot of times, just going over the generations of at least, 100 years and way beyond, if you think of everything that's happened with wars and everything that will have come from everybody's stories coming down and through us, it's all been about this isolation. But then what that's meant is that anything that might have brought shame or guilt or blame or dishonor to a family has been excluded or not talked about.
Mm.
There's been some sort of, it's not safe to talk about that. Say a grandmother had was pregnant and miscarried, or she had a stillborn baby. And it was just a case of, we're just back from war. We've got all these mouths to feed. People will go, oh, well, that's a blessing. It's not another, you haven't got another mouth to feed. Or it just wasn't the right time. And you've got all of these other children to look after. So you just got to crack on with it, get on with it. And that's the way that it is. So she learns to shut it down and not acknowledge what actually happened. That baby, that child was born into the system, but is dead. It's not there. It's not acknowledged within
Yeah.
the system. So it might be that just the acknowledgement of that, like, I see your pain, I see what we're carrying, like you lost your child. This child actually belongs in the system. But because it was excluded and not talked about, it actually pulls the attention of the system. There's something wonky in the system because it hasn't got its place.
Yeah.
Hopefully going forward, we learn to do this in say healing happens in community. We are responsible for ourselves, but we amplify it when we're doing it in community with people, and we start to interact with each other again and reclaim our very humanness,
Yes.
the emotions, the understanding, the compassion, and we take all of the other stuff out of it, the religion and the dogma and the right and the wrong and the victim and the perpetrator and the separation out of it, and we start to unite from a place of love and open-heartedness and curiosity, and also that sense of creation. What are we going to create moving forward? What's the new human story?
Mm.
Because actually
Yeah.
we don't need to keep reliving those lessons of the past. We don't need to go to war. We don't need to do all of this. This is all down to communication and community and love underneath it all.
Yeah. I love that. I love that being able to acknowledge what's happened in the past and then being able to sort of move forward. We're creating new constellations, aren't we? All the time.
Yeah.
Our interaction with other humans. We've learned lessons. Once we've acknowledged the past, we can choose how to go
Yeah.
forward.
Once you make life conscious, and then you become a conscious creator, you can honor what was, honor your lineage, honor the ancestry, but you can be more conscious and have that power with you. You can be more aware because you're not going to recognize, sometimes without doing work like this, what all of those patterns are. But once
Mhm.
you're aware of them and that awareness is there, you can't unsee it, you can't unknow it. So then it becomes where we can recognize more quickly where we're going into fear and not love. But if we stop and we go, actually, where have we seen things like this before in the past? Is this actually mine? Is this coming from me? Because most of my day I can talk the talk and I can live this when it's just for me, but actually we're all a community. And this has to
Mhm.
be a bottom up thing. So whether we do like we do the work with EFT, it's very much around doing your stuff,
Yeah.
but all of this bottom up coming together and the people being the ones that make the change, because actually we are sovereign, we are powerful,
Yeah.
we have the capacity to be able to change all of this stuff when we recognize and we work with and we acknowledge what was, let it move through us so that it creates space for all of the unknown magic that's waiting for us and the way that humanity can be moving forward. We kind of open up and we allow ourselves to not just dream, but like actually create. This is what we know is possible for humanity. And it's evolved beyond going around that same loop and loop and loop
Yeah.
again and again
Yeah.
and again.
And the beauty in doing that as part of, as you say, a collective as well. It's a group of people that are healing. It's not just the one person that's come with the issue.
Yeah.
Everybody. 'Cause I guess you can't really do a family constellation on your own, can you? It needs to be facilitated as part of a group.
No, you absolutely can. You can do it with just like, you can just pick something, you can go, this represents my mother, this represents my father, and you can tap into that energy and actually do it
Ah,
for yourself.
okay. Yeah.
I think the beauty with the facility is the same with everything, is you haven't got that emotional investment
Yeah.
or the
Because I guess
projection of it.
you'd end up directing it, wouldn't you, rather than
Yeah,
letting it just unfold, because you'd be sort
yeah,
of unconsciously or consciously. I guess it comes back to what we were talking about at the start about you possibly looking for someone to blame or someone to shame
yes,
for something happening.
absolutely. Whereas typically in a constellation, whether it's online or it's in person, it would just be a case of before you even step into that, or you open up the space and open up the field to kind of expand and constellate, you get into that heart, into that center, into the empty center of, you're not any roles, you're not any identities, you're not male or female, you are not judgment, you're not victim perpetrator. You're not powerful, anything else. You are just you're just empty. You're just void of all of that judgment.
Yeah.
And you're just going in it with an open curiosity and trusting what comes through you. But what you typically find is that what is very common is that you realize once you've connected with something, oh, hang on, this is part of my story too. But you didn't know that because it was a blind constellation, you know?
Yes. Yeah. Fascinating.
It's phenomenal.
I know that you have had experiences yourself that have made a big difference personally, as well
Yeah,
as being someone who facilitates for other people.
yeah. It's yeah, like so many stories. If you have somebody else facilitating a session for you and you're open to it and it can go in a completely different direction. And
Yeah.
sometimes as the person whose constellation it is, it can be a bit frustrating because you're like, I want it to really work with this, but actually it's whatever's right and ready to be seen comes and it somehow always links. You know, it
Yeah.
goes off in a completely different tangent. And I mean, I've known
That's one thing I absolutely loved watching. It's that you can come with one thing and actually there will be a resolution, but it won't necessarily be the one that you were expecting. And even in that, it can have a significant impact then on what happens afterwards. And
yeah,
relationships now that you have now can be impacted on based on resolution of things that have happened in the past.
yeah. And I mean, you can only work with your system, right? So I've even had experiences where I've been really curious, like, what can I do about this? For me, in my system, this is me, this is the issue I've got. And what comes out of that, it gets to a point where actually you've done as much as you can with you. There's something going on for somebody who isn't actually in your family system. So you can't do anything
Right.
with that. There's, that's their life. That's, their stuff, their work to do.
Yeah.
So you kind of end that. But actually what happens is when you've worked with your energy on something, that changes things for everybody and
Yeah.
everything. The energy is completely different. So if your energy is different and the energy that's trying to relate to you by default changes
Mm,
somehow. So it ripples out and brings about healing, sometimes even without anybody knowing what's being done. Just something changes.
yeah. I guess especially
Someone's
where it's like repeating patterns and things, if you're stopping that, that doesn't need to repeat again. Well, that of course is going to then impact the relationship because again, as you were saying, we're not individuals. We're all part of interconnected systems, whether that's on an energetic level or not. So your relationships will naturally change, whether you notice it or they notice it.
it's like having a tapestry or something, some red, whichever way you look at it, and there's some sort of knot that's there. And if
Yeah.
you loosen that knot and everything else kind of releases a bit, it's got more energy, it's got more flow to it. The attention isn't being pulled to this one thing. It's going where it's supposed to be going.
Yeah.
So it can have a huge impact.
Yeah. I can imagine like not carrying all of that baggage of all of those people in your past can really get you to a place of sort of more peace with yourself and more space to feel what's
Mhm.
yours instead.
So then the next time you notice that in yourself or in somebody else, and you're like, oh, that reminds me of this story. You're looking at it through a different lens. You're looking at it from a different perspective with more compassion. You're more in the heart. You've got more empathy
Mm,
and for the humanness and the way that we all are victims and perpetrators. We all mess up. It's part of being human.
yeah.
We all have love underneath it all and a sense of like want to belong, and we're all striving for balance. So when you start to recognize the story afterwards, or you are reminded of something, it's not from a place of being in it and bodily feeling it. It's from a place of witnessing. That is what happened. I can feel that going on within me, and you've got more power because you're in the present moment. You're not back there.
Yes.
You're actually living it. You're in the present and you're saying, this was the story, this is what was happening before, but actually you can stay in this present moment and choose what I'm going to do next. So it gets you in that position of reclaiming your power and your choice and how you can choose to show up and interact with other people.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Wow, Kaz, I could talk forever with you on this. And I really hope it's given people a good flavor of what family constellations are, what the possibilities are available, and why they're relevant to you now and changing your story and your feeling of well-being going forward. So if people want to explore this more for themselves, Kaz, I know you hold some family constellation sessions yourself, don't you? What's the best way for people to find out more and explore it as they need?
Yes, if we're streaming on the social media, we can have a look at my website, karenconville.com, and just reach out and have a chat. And you can book your own constellation. So you'd pick a time and you could do that in person if you're near me, or we do that online. And actually it works really well online. It's really good. And it means that more people from around the world, the global community, can connect that way as well.
Yeah, beautiful. And can you get involved as a witness as well as coming with
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what happens is the person whose constellation it is will obviously be the one that pays for that constellation, but then everybody that comes to witness or represent comes for free. And it's a great way. Anybody that shows up will no doubt find some gems in there for themselves, some little pearls of wisdom for their own journey and for the family system. And just even if you just come and you don't participate in anything, you're always welcome to just come and witness and to see how it all unfolds.
Yes, because as
And
before, you only get involved if you feel drawn to. So
yeah,
you wouldn't come along saying, "Oh, I'm always really good at being the grandmother," something like that. It's not a role
yeah,
play. It's feeling into where you want to be involved. I haven't had a family constellation done for myself yet, but I have witnessed a few, and it is an absolutely fascinating process. So I would highly recommend people witness a family constellation in order to see whether you connect with it. Seeing the impact afterwards as well is really incredible. And it can seem very woo, and it's hard possibly to get across, certainly in a short podcast episode, the what it truly involves and the impact it can have. But I really appreciate it, Kaz, that you've come along and you've articulated it so well. So I
yeah.
hope everybody's enjoyed it.
Series actually on Netflix called Another Self.
Another
If
self.
anybody, Another Self, it's a Turkish series, but it's dubbed quite well. So it's but if anyone was just curious as to like, I don't know what she's talking about, what does she mean? People stand and they represent. It gives you an idea. But obviously you can find a lot out online as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much for coming along, Kaz.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Family constellations is one of those practices that's hard to fully grasp until you witness one, but I hope Kaz has really given you a flavour of it today. What struck me most was how much lighter life can feel once you've stopped carrying stories that were never really yours to carry. More space, more energy, and relationships that shift in ways that you might not even notice at first, but over time. It's not always an easy process, but the sense of freedom on the other side sounds so worth it. Thank you so much, Kaz, for a generous and thoughtful conversation. Until next time, take care of yourselves and remember, there are many paths to wellness, and sometimes they involve gracefully handing back a story that isn't yours, so you're free to lead your own.